Do you want to learn how to time the markets? Join me and Ryan Mastro Wednesday after the close, where we're going to show you how to navigate through the breakdowns and the breakouts. Click the link to sign up for this free webinar. We'll see you at 4 o'clock Eastern at the close. Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take on this hump day for Market Rebellion. It's Wednesday. Yes, we got to get over that hump. We've had a really interesting start to the week. And matter of fact, yesterday, when you look at how we started off, we were very calm. Things didn't really seem like there was too much going on. The markets were in a fairly tight range. And that's where we started. Everything seemed to be all right. And then in the second half of the day, we started to see this cascading move to the downside, not of any kind of epic proportion or anything like that, but we did finish down about 115, 120 points to the downside on the Dow. That wasn't so great. And that was actually after a very late last few minutes of the day recovery off the absolute lows of about 40 points. Same kind of story with the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq actually finished only down about 20 points or so, but same thing. Second half of the day really struggled. As a matter of fact, had to come back about 40 points just to figure a spot down of 20 points on the day. And that all happened in the last 6 or 8 minutes of the session. So some buying really, really late, lifting some of those stocks off of those lows, the absolute lows. So what was really going on? Well, we still had oil that was holding over 80. That was something that we've been watching very closely. It's actually been as high in the last few trading sessions as 82. The 10-year slipped a little bit, down to about 157. We've been up around 1.6. We've been pulling back a little bit, and we're finding this sort of range right now for the 10-year. Tell you what, the volatility index, we're just teasing right back and forth over 20. We were 19 yesterday, up to almost 21, but we actually still finished below 20, despite the fact that we were looking at a day that started to sell to the downside. You might have expected to see a little bit more of a bump in the volatility index. We did not get that. Volume was a little bit shy of where we have been, 32.5 million contracts yesterday. We've been in that upper 30 million, over 40 million sort of category for a while, but we've slipped back down. So we'll see if that's a theme, if that's something, or just a Tuesday and a slow Tuesday kind of a thing with not a whole lot going on in terms of the markets themselves, despite the fact that we did have that second half sort of sell-off. Now, what was some of the names that really did stick out throughout the day? Well, I thought Tesla was one of them. It was holding up close to 2% for the majority of the day. Nike, another name that was up about 2% off of a upgrade there. And Target, which you look over at consumer discretionary and how they've been trading, and we've seen a little bit of improvement there. So that was one of the bright spots yesterday. We started to slip in technology yesterday, just a little bit. Semiconductors, we slipped just a little bit. Bitcoin, we were right around that 56,000 level. We've been sort of pulling back. We hit 57,000. We've been kind of easing back just a little bit. We'll see what kind of a range we find ourselves in with Bitcoin, but that's always been a very interesting to keep an eye on that, especially after the springboard off of that 29,000 level that we had hit and all the way back to where we are now in a fairly short period of time. MGM stood out yesterday. This is one of the names that we've talked about. I talked about it last week for an unusual options activity. I talked about this week again because we had that upgrade yesterday. Stock was up nearly 10% yesterday. We actually didn't hit just once. We hit twice with unusual option activity in MGM yesterday. Just looking fairly short term and looking right at where the stock is trading for the most part and getting the bang for the buck. We still had some nice movement out of Las Vegas Sands. Penn obviously had a nice day as well. You take a look over at Ford. Ford, sort of quietly, it gets talked about it. I see a lot of guys on Twitter, a lot of the folks that are here watching right now probably, and we are watching a little bit of what's been going on with Ford, just kind of stair-stepping to the upside, up a little over 3% yesterday. Now, so that one stood out. A couple of those opening type names and some of these high multiple names, the Oktas, the CrowdStrike, the Fastenal, they all had a pretty decent day yesterday, despite the fact that the markets were selling off. So that was partly how we started to really close out the day. Now we get into today. Starts off a little bit calm once again, and we're looking like things are going to be okay. Not great, but okay. We were up, at least in the pre-market, actually pretty good, up about 80 points on the Dow, up about 80 points on the Nasdaq. Steadily started to slip, and as we get closer into the first half hour of the trading session, we really started to slip. Matter of fact, the Dow was down about 140 points. I've seen the Dow in this first hour of trade down as much as 250 points. Last I looked, it was down a little over 200 points once again. And we were watching the Nasdaq just sort of slipping up about 60 or 70 points in the actual markets themselves after being up about 80 points, 75 points in the pre-market. And then we had a nice move. We were up almost 100 points very early on, moving back and forth. And then the pressure started to come on. And that pressure coming across in just about every single sector. Some of the sectors that really stood out for me, energy early on, we're down about 1%, started to slip a little bit more. It was down about 1.5%. Financials were actually not quite positive, but just barely in the negative territory, and then started to really cascade down. They were down about 1.5%. I've seen it down as much as 1.7%. While we're watching this market, and we're crediting everything that we're seeing that is adding to this move that we are seeing to the downside. So we finally kick off earnings. We've got JP Morgan, right? JP Morgan puts out some pretty substantially strong numbers, but the reaction is what it has been in the past. It wasn't too many days ago it hit new highs at 171. We were right around 165 or thereabouts before we got into today. Last I looked, it was down about 2.5% for JP Morgan. It was down 1% early, down about 2.5%. It was dragging some of the rest of the financials along with it. As a matter of fact, take a look at Citi, take a look at Bank of America, take a look at Wells Fargo, all of those somewhere between 2 and 2.5% or more to the downside. So those really coming under pressure. Blackrock, on the other hand, also earnings, but also as opposed to the rest of what we are seeing from a financial perspective, and BlackRock's definitely a different animal, up about 3% early on. So that was something that complete diversion that we were seeing there. Delta down about 3.5%, despite the fact that it seemed like a lot of the numbers they wanted to hit, they did hit or beat. And that was very impressive. Talking about business traveler, maybe coming back, travel numbers and all of the rest of that. But there are some headwinds out there. And it's not so much that we're talking about vaccines and everything else. We're actually talking about energy prices, right? We all talk about oil. We all talk about what's been going on. And we all know it went from 38 last year in November all the way up to 82 just a couple of days ago. And here we are trading just below 80 today. And that obviously is going to be something that Delta and the rest of the airlines are going to have to figure out as time goes along. Chinese names actually, at least early on, were trading pretty nice. We're trading anywhere between a couple of percent and 3% to the upside. Had a real nice move out of PDD. That name was up over 6% early on. So got a couple of unusuals for you, and we'll get out of here. Get out of your way. Affirm is number one. AFRM, Affirm. That one's trading right around 144.75. And again, right at the money they're buying. 5,200 of the October 145 calls. I said October. That means the third Friday in October, which also means this Friday. So just be very careful and understand the time frame we're talking about. It's Wednesday. So you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's it. But the 145s, they paid about $3 as much as $5, 5,200 of those trading. The next one I've got for you is Plug Energy. Not a name that we talk about as often as we talk a lot about a lot of these other different names, whether it's in the energy space, the EV space, whatever. But hydrogen power. Now, Plug, pretty interesting. Stock was trading right around 32.40. We had a buyer of 3,000 of the October 22nd expiring. Gives you a little extra time, another week. The 35 strike calls, those were anywhere between 65 cents and 85 cents for those calls. The stock's going to have to make a pretty decent run. Stock was trading, like I say, 32.40. They're buying the 35 calls. You've got a week and a half for these to work, but it is interesting to see that. We've been seeing a lot of energy hitting each and every day. We've seen a lot in so many different other categories as well. But this one sort of stood out early. As a matter of fact, we're seeing some really, really interesting activity right now in technology as well. But I'm going to save that for John or whomever, maybe later on. Oh, and tomorrow, or today rather, myself, Ryan Mastro, right at the close today. You got to register for this one. You're going to want to register for this one. He's going to show us, along with myself, we're going to be discussing back and forth, but we're going to be talking about how do you trade momentum? And that's something that obviously when we see that happening, and we've seen that happening in all kinds of different sectors of late, but that's something that's not always easy. But Ryan and myself, we're going to try to work together and make it a little bit easier for you to understand. That is today, right at the close. I'm only going to be there for the first half of that, though. I'm going to have to break out. I'm also doing fast money tonight at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time with Melissa and the gang. So I look forward to that as well. Folks, have a great day of trading.